All right, we can get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Connecting Struggles 2.0. I don't want to take too much time from this discussion, from this panel. I just wanted to mention how this Balkan Solidarity Network sort of came about, which was from a point of Palestine Solidarity Organizing, where in Tirana we realized that we are starting from the ground up, from the grassroots, and there was a lot of need to share and learn from other groups. So last year, last June, we organized an online discussion that was with uh, some groups from Romania, some groups from Sarajevo and Croatia and Greece, I believe. And there was a small conversation where Emina had mentioned that there will be a grounded festival. And that's where a lot of the people from the network first got to meet in person. Unfortunately, I was not there. Um, Following that, the network has grown quite a lot. Now, I believe that there are at least one, if not more, groups from each of the Balkan countries. And we've done some coordinated actions and had some statements, but this will be a bigger, broader, general conversation with the idea that maybe we can organize somewhat of some in-person gathering in the future. But I will now give it to Valentina, who's been with us from the very beginning of this network to explain and more of the idea for today. Valen?
Yes, thank you, Ash, and hello, everyone. It's a real joy to be connected with everyone here. I'm Valentina, and I'm based in Tirana, as Ash mentioned before. Um, the idea for today's meeting is really a start, is to do a little bit better what was done in the last year and the year prior. The aim for that we've been discussing in the last meetings and encounters and has been to use this possibility of today's conversation to work out a way to firstly gather together at some point, or maybe in the autumn or in the winter or beginning of next year, and really work out potential action to understand what is a Balkan Solidarity Network today, and really practically understand how to be a stronger voice and effective voice in the face of the fascist, basically. Like, it's very simple, as simple as that. Leading to the first panel that we have, which is Feminist Solidarity Across the Balkans, that Emina will introduce all the speakers, so I will not be long with this, but I think it's just important to say that feminism is also a practice that connects all the other panels, because we work with intersectionality and we intersect the struggles, which is what this interconnecting struggle is about, really. So the first panel is feminist, transfeminist, I would say, and so I give the space to Emina to start introducing everyone.
Valentina and Ashik and Anna and the others, thank you so much for putting this together and for inviting us all into this space. That is incredibly important to be here today, even though it's super hard to be here today, also with everything that's happening in Gaza, particularly now in these moments. But I think, these conversations are extremely important for our grounding and for sharpening our struggle. So I'm very, very grateful to be in this shared space with you all. My name is Amina. I'm based in Croatia. I am engaged in the labors and struggles of the Free Palestine Initiative, and I will be moderating today's panel. And at the start of this panel that Valentina already announced, titled Feminist Solidarity Across the Balkans, I would like to invite us to recognize, to be cognizant of the ways how the struggle for free Palestine and many other struggles have been impacting our bodies, our emotions, and our actions, and how a lot of accumulated anger and disbelief and despair, in a sense, devastate our bodies and oftentimes our relationships with others. So I'm inviting us to be aware of that and to be in a space where we are being here in relation to each other rather than confronting each other. And feminist practice is inviting us to think beyond countering oppression, beyond countering violence, beyond being anti-capitalist, anti-militarist, anti-police. But it invites us to think beyond, to think and imagine and practice care and nourishment and mutual holding of each other. And I hope we can also practice that today. I think we are grounded in that practice in a sense across the Balkans. And I think it's also important to say that this panel, because of the ways it came together, because of the people who are here, is a very strong invitation for de-anchoring from NGO formats, from academic formats, from any known structures, and invites us to do a lot of unlearning and be in honest conversations with each other around the challenges that feminist struggle is being, or feminist struggle is faced with in the pro-Palestinian movements. And how feminism oftentimes, because of its radical oppositions, complicates Palestinian struggle. So if we can open those complexities, that is going to be highly admirable and extremely important to do. I will remind us that one of the feminist scholars that we have all learned from, I believe, Chandra Mohanty, speaks about the importance of decolonizing labor in feminist practice. And she calls that decolonization a labor of love. So in that sense, I believe our presence does show that labor of love. Our presence not only in this space, but in these struggles across times and differences and disciplines and geographies. So with that grounding, I would like to sort of open this panel and would like to invite us to be all the time cognizant of the importance of that relationality between us and Palestine. We have talked before this panel how to structure it and how to invite contributions. And so 6 feminist scholars, activists, artists who are present here are going to offer their contributions and their interventions to the questions of challenges and breakthroughs of grassroots feminist organizing in different geographies across the Balkans. We are going to be talking about the ways we delink feminism from NGOization, from Western liberalism, from Westernization, in a sense, of these spaces and struggles. And we are going to be talking as well about the question of understanding what feminist struggle means these days, and how do we establish and set the grounds for deep decolonial work. In that sense, amplification of transborder solidarity and transborder feminist collaborations is of utmost importance to be addressed in this conversation today. So I'm going to introduce briefly our 6 speakers and then invite them to offer 5 to 6 minute to do their offerings within the 5 or 6 minute time slot, and then we are going to open the conversation with everyone else present here. So I'm very, very grateful to be in conversation with Valentina Bonici, a feminist and activist based in Tirana, Albania, and another colleague from Tirana, Vasilika Laci, who's a feminist and human rights activist deeply rooted in collective feminist Tirana. And then we have Elena Morina, activist from Pristina, Kosovo. And I'm happy to greet Anna Karastatis, a scholar from Athens in Greece. And then we have here Dejana Cvetkovic, a journalist from Serbia, who's also a member of the journalist group Fighting Violence Against Women. And then we have as well our colleague Gorana Mlinarevic from Feminist Anti-Militarist Collective based in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I'm going to invite Valentina first, and then I'll hand it over later to Vasilika and the others over here. So Valentina, please bring us your thoughts and your practices, your decolonizing practices to this space.
Okay, I think I would give the first part to Vasilika because we are together in the feminist collective in Albania. So I think it's better if she starts and then I can follow up with a couple of thoughts. Is that okay?
I love this. Vasilika, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a lot of improvising. Hi, Amina. Hi, all. Thanks a lot for the question and for the space to hold this conversation and for the space to come together. As you mentioned in the document that you sent to us, the practice of coming together is what constitutes feminist practices as relationality as a way of more important than what we are doing. We've been, since you mentioned also the point about the NGOization, there's so much of these workshops that we attend that there's no start and there's no end, where you just attend one thing in space and then you leave there without knowing one new person. And this is something that we've been going away from. The feminist collective in Tirana started from angry young girls meeting in our house, in our rooms, talking together of why femicide, why hate, why violence against women, what can we do more about it. Slowly we progressed to organize ourselves, and we have now transformed our group in a fluid group that meets very often, that supports each other. We don't have specific agendas, even though we often try to come out with specific points of discussion and conversation, especially in organizing things that are progressing our agenda in different ways. What we have been able to achieve is holding now for many years the 8th of March protest, but also organizing smaller and sometimes even more significant protests when there are cases of femicide or there are cases of violence. What we try to do is to be support for each other, but we also are working in collaboration with so many other spaces. We don't have a space, which we often consider a problem, because there's not one location where people can come, but that has given us so much energy and opportunities to meet in other spaces where we pour ourselves, and we also take the form of the advice where we go, but we also get a new space every time we go in. So this is where we have been meeting with different struggles and different groups. And yes, the Palestine group is one of them. I think Valentina and other members of the collective can speak more to that. But for us, it's very important that we find this space of horizontality where there is no nobody owning dynamics are not ruled by power, but they are about how we can make things together. Oftentimes there are questions about also creativity and discussions of, oh, I created this slogan and what to do, but what you create is lost when the collective picks it up and transforms it into something wonderful. And this is how we've organized a lot of things that have been so inspiring to us first in the first place. I will say the last sentence and close it here because for me it summarizes some of the beautiful things that we've done. 2 years ago, our 8th of March was about the night, how we are afraid to walk in the nights in the city. And in order to connect it with the Palestine movement, we took the songs Liebe Palästina and translated into The Night is Ours. And 2 days ago, we had a pro-Palestine, pre-Palestine protest that was organized in the square. And there were some moments we were transforming on the protest the words of that song again in Albanian to make it back to where the word of the songs it belonged to Free Palestine. So I thought that it was such a circular way to connect to represent what we've been trying to connect struggles together. I'll leave it to Valentina.
Thank you, Lika. Okay, what I can add to this, which is what we also shared with Lika, is the independence of the collective, which is in completely like is an informal collective. It's not registered. We're not attached to any NGO or registered organization. The economy, really, we rely to our own efforts, and the way I think a little bit maybe sometimes clumsily so, but with a big heart is came from the effort of every capability that each one has. So the collective is made of people working in different spaces. For example, I am an artist and I run a space called Boulevard. So I share the connection with the artists, which is very important, and I think we should do more in connection to other countries as well in the Balkans. Then we have journalists, we have designers, creatives, researchers, people working closely with diplomacy also. So we bring in the collective all the different knowledge that we have. We have feminist reading practices as well. So it comes from how we educate ourselves, um, uh, how we connect to also we want to try more to connect and decentralize more to the capital city. Probably this is also an issue that other places have. And also we have a representative of the Roma community, for example, which is always important. And it is trans feminist, our collective as well, because we together we organize 8th of March, but we also organize Pride. And so in the protest, this is very visible and interconnected, and it does create quite a lot of problems in the country. Um, okay, what else should I say? I think what would be great is if at the end of this conversation we can find a way to think about how to be more connected in our collectives, sharing knowledge, sharing artistic practice, sharing archives, sharing libraries, sharing like we talk a lot about archives and libraries as a form of resistance, which I think is very important. And also in like politically, really how we can support each other more, and how to be many, meaning I don't know, like sharing when we need to have more signatures, when we need to have a stronger voice for something, how we can be more effective, how can we be many. And this is my wish, that we can work this out and bring it to the next meeting that we will have, hopefully, in real life, because I would like to meet all of you in real life. So that's it. I close here.
Thank you very much for your introductions, Vasilika and Valentina. And I'm going to invite others, Elena and Anna, if you could pick it up and continue the discussion about the grassroots feminist movements in your realms, in the geographies where you labor. What are the challenges? What are the breakthroughs? Where does the colonial practice emerge, and how do you sustain it? And how is Palestine woven into your struggles as well? Elena, these have been heavy loads to carry, and thank you for entrusting us to share this amongst this group. I feel that you might also not know everyone here, and we don't know each other that well. So for me, to hear you speaking this way speaks about a lot of trust in this space, and I'm hoping that we can hold each other with a lot of grace. And I'm hoping that we can also identify similar practices in these spaces that can be, relational and can be empowering for all of us present here. There is so much work that needs to be done within our collectives and movements, and you have just reminded us of the grim reality in a sense, but also of the necessity of being committed to social justice on so many levels. Anna, I would like to open the floor to you as well. Elena has already announced your important contribution. So yeah, the floor is yours. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation and the moderation, Emina, and for all of the work that Valentina, Ashik, Anna, you've put into organizing this gathering. And also for the sharing you just did, Elena and Lika and Valentina, speaking about the action of Collettivi Femministirane. And I also want to thank Patti Vardami, who connected me with all of you. In fact, I feel a bit humbled speaking in her stead and joining you in this conversation. As Patti, I think would have, I think, a lot to contribute that I can only sort of learn from. I guess these questions you've posed are to address any of them. We will need so much time, right? So I can just say like one or two thoughts based on my experiences of feminist organizing, No Borders organizing in Greece and in the other places that I've lived in my life as a person who has a migration background from Greece to Turtle Island and back. And I think that already we've started to touch upon something that I also wanted to address, that you've mentioned very powerfully, sharing your experiences, Elena, and trying to implement a kind of community accountability, if I understood you correctly, culture and practices after direct experiences and becoming aware, opening this Pandora's box, as you put it, of violences within movements. And when we're talking about, challenges and breakthroughs of grassroots organizing, I think one of the key challenges that we are facing at the same time as we have this fascistization process all over the world is the ways in which violences are internalized and enacted against one another and ourselves. And of course, this us, which we seek to make large, is always contested and limited. And a lot of the time we find ourselves burnt out or pushed out of collective spaces, of social movements. And a lot of the ways in which we think about demobilization from social movements ends up actually disappearing the reasons why people feel the need to leave, step back, or are simply pushed out. And a lot of those have to do with interpersonal violence of one kind or another, whether that's gendered and sexualized in ways that we recognize, as intimate partner violence or as domestic violence, or whether that's in our organizing practices, right? And you spoke, Lika, to horizontality and the importance of that. And I think about how many times in our organizing, we are actually working with unspoken or even spoken hierarchies, and how damaging those can be to our ability to actually contest power and transform it. So I think this connects also to the other question of how we understand and practice the decolonial feminism in the Balkans, or anywhere for that matter, especially in global peripheries and in the global South. I think it connects to it precisely because, like heteropatriarchal power and how that inflects our organizing practices is a function of the coloniality of power. I mean, in the context in which I live, Greece, if we are to understand this as some kind of historical continuity, which is of course a highly problematic notion, but in any case, patriarchy has ancient origins, in contrast to other places in the world where patriarchy has been imposed in the colonial modern era. Nevertheless, the coloniality of patriarchy, as one of the underpinnings of the system, these interlocking systems of oppression today, is manifested also in the ways in which we are contesting any form of power, whether that's borders, state power more generally, police, capital, and of course, settler colonial and imperialist aspects of it. So I really appreciated what you said at the beginning, Ashik, about, if I remember correctly, it was you who said it, about sort of these being kind of transversal struggles, right? That they're interconnected, they're interwoven. And although we are taking them, as kind of topics one after the other in our meeting here for sake of having a point of entry, I think it's quite clear that they're all connected. And so when we're thinking about the question of solidarity and how we can enact it, I think we really need to go to what is at the root of all of these structures and all of these manifestations of violence, from the state level to the interpersonal and to the intrapersonal as well. And I too, like you, Elena, have been very much inspired by Black feminists thinking and praxis around these issues, and the models of community accountability, and also kind of the critique. I pulled this off the shelf now in the feminist library here at the Feminist Autonomous Center, which I think is a great sort of point of entry into the debate about NGOization and the sort of pulling away from the NGO model in order to reinvigorate the roots of feminist struggle in autonomous movements, horizontal movements. I'll leave it at that. I hope I haven't taken up too much time. But certainly I feel really inspired always to meet people, if even through the mediation of this screen, who are, engaging in these politics concretely on in the ways that we live. It's more for me about, changing what we imagine life can be for one another than it is, like siloing off a kind of space in our daily lives where we are engaging in something that we call activism. So anyway, so I'm very inspired to be here with all of you, and quite honestly, I needed a little bit of a hope, an injection of hope.
Agreed with that injection of hope, and there's so much resonance I found in your words, Anna. So thank you so much for being here. Diana, could we invite you to join us as well? Diana is going to be talking, she's going to be speaking in Serbian, and Anna will offer translation.
Hvala puno na pozivu da budem deo ovog panela i hvala puno Ani na prevodu. Danas ću govoriti iz perspektive novinarke, ali da, dobro, već ste me predstavili, novinarka iz Srbije, juga Srbije, iz Ranja. Jako mi je važno da spomenem i moju mrežu, novinarke protiv nasilja prema ženama. Ana, slobodno mi reci ako trebam da usporim, da prevedeš, zastaću.
Da, sačekaj samo prvo da kažem. So yes, hello everyone. I'm Anna. I'll translate for Diana today. So she's just introduced herself. She's a freelance journalist from Vranje, which is in southern Serbia, and she's a member of the collective Journalists Against Violence Towards Women. And she's thanking everyone for being here. Go ahead.
Kao novinarka smatram da je jako važno to umrežavanje sa drugim ženama i jako mi je važno da spomenem svoju neformalnu grupu koja broji oko 90 novinarki, urednica, ali i blogerki, influencerki i drugih radnica na internetu koje se bave temom rodno zasnovanog nasilja, odnosno muškog nasilja prema ženama. I pored svega toga što radimo analize, obuke i sve to, tu smo jedno za drugu kao međusobna podrška, s obzirom na to da se zaista bavimo jako teškim temama i mislim da je to zaista mnogo važno i ja od same grupe dobijam i ogromnu i snagu i podršku kad god je teško.
Yes, so as a journalist and feminist, I believe it's very important to connect with other women, and that is where I draw strength to work on important issues. Our informal network, Journalists Against Violence Against Women, consists of about 90 journalists, editors, bloggers, influencers across Serbia who are dealing with the topic of gender-based violence. And in addition to all that work, a really significant part of it actually is just holding the space for supporting each other between colleagues, because obviously the themes and topics that they cover are very heavy. And so being there for one another in those moments is also something that she wants to point out.
Živim u Vranju, to je mesto koje mislim to je mesto koje se nalazi blizu Kosova, na kom sam bila 2 puta, također i blizu Bujanovca gdje je većinski albansko stanovništvo. Prvi put sam na Kosovu bila preko programa feminističke prolećne škole i Art Polisa pre 3 godine i prošle godine zbog rada na tekstu Feministički otpor nismo odlučivale o ratu, hoćemo da odlučujemo o miru, koji sam radila uz podršku Birna za tamnu zonu.
Okay, so I live in Vranje in southern Serbia near Bujanovac, which is a majority population of Albanian, and close to Kosovo, which Diana has visited twice already. The first time was through the Feminist Spring School and Art Polis program 3 years ago, and the second time was last year while working on an article called Feminist Resistance. We didn't decide on war, we want to decide on peace, which you created with support from the Balkan Investigative Reporting Network for the Tampon Zone podcast in Serbia.
Pre nego da sam otišla na Kosovo, zaista nisam puno znala o ratu. Ja sam 95. godište i mislim da mi je ovo jedan od najvažnijih tekstova koje sam radila.
Oh,
Da,
yes,
sam
sorry.
videla.
Izvini. So before going to Kosovo, she didn't know a lot about the war, so because she's was born in 1995, I think, and it was a very important visit for her. Nasi?
Da, ženska strana rata je apsolutno zanemarena. Svi pokušaji žene iz regiona da se on spreči nisu ostali dovoljno vidljivi. One su uprkos ratu, propagandi i nacionalizmu, one su se umržavale, posjećivale tokom ratnih sukoba, pravile radionice, ženske žurke. Također razmenjivale su svoje kulturološke igre i pesmi i pružale otpor nacionalizmu i patrijarhatu zajedno, ali i svako u svojoj sredini. Prosto su verovale, kako su one meni prenele, da oni imaju dovoljno moći da taj rat spreče.
Yes, so the female side of war is generally neglected in the Balkans, and the efforts of women in the region to prevent the wars of the 90s were not made visible enough. Despite the war, the propaganda, the nationalism, they built networks and visited each other during the wars, held workshops, women's parties, exchanged cultural games and songs, all to resist nationalism and patriarchy together, each within their own communities. Because they believed that they had the power in society to actually stop the war.
Za mene je bila privilegija razgovarati sa tim ženama, među kojima su i Mihane Salihubala, Staša Zajović, Igbale Rogova, Lepa Mlađenović koja mi je pomagala tokom celog procesa rada na tekstu, ali i samog odlaska na Kosovo, Nora Ahmeta i Bobana Macanović, Vjosa Dobruna, Vera Kurtić i mnoge druge. I one su u tim najbrutalnijim trenucima 90-ih, znači odbijali nacionalizam, militarizam, te etničke podele. One su se vodile parolama ne u naše ime i ne dajmo se od svojih prevariti.
It was a privilege to speak with many of these women, including Mihane Salihubala, Stasha Zajović, Igbala Rogova, Lepa Mlađenović, who was specifically very supportive to Diana throughout the process of writing this piece, which I will send in the chat so people can translate and read later if they'd like. Nora Ahmetaj, Bobana Macanović, sorry, Vjosa Dobruna, Vera Kurtić, and many others. Because in the most brutal moments during the 90s, they all rejected nationalism, militarism, and ethnic divisions, standing by slogans like "Not in our name" and "Let's not be fooled by our own."
I danas uz rast nacionalizma i etničkih tenzija, njihova borba za mir i pravdu i solidarnost ostale u nasleđu novih generacija, koje zapravo imaju zadatak da prekinu tu transgeneracijsku traumu i izgrade međusobno povjerenje.
Today, amid growing nationalism and ethnic tensions in the region, these women's struggle for peace, justice, and solidarity remains an important legacy for new generations who now bear the responsibility to break this transgenerational trauma and build mutual trust across communities.
Ana, hvala ti puno na prevodu.
Hvala tebi. Mislim, je to to? Super.
Hvala puno, Diana. Thank you so much, Diana, for your contributions and for reminding us about the importance of the transgenerational feminist collaborations and conversations. Let's move on to invite Gorana Mlinarević from the Feminist Anti-Militarist Collective from Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, to join the conversation. Gorana, please, the floor is yours. Please reflect on your questions.
I'm just going to kind of comment the transgenerational, so I'm coming in there. As someone who is trying to actually really connect different generations, given that I'm kind of in between the so-called generations. Well, my problem is that when I saw the questions, then my answer is I actually have so many other questions. And that's my first reaction, because we talk about kind of challenges to grassroots organizing, but the question is also, how do we organize? How do we kind of consider, what do we consider? I mean, we all think that we understand what is a grassroots, but then again, what is really grassroots? And who are we? When we talk about Balkans, how do we understand Balkans? How we understand our positionality within Balkans? do we really think that there is a common knowledge and that we understand hierarchies within the Balkans the same way or not? When we talk about decolonize within the Balkans, how do we understand colonialism, and what colonialism do we react to? Because for the Balkans, it's like so many different experiences of the colonialism. And when we say Western, how do we reflect towards so-called Eastern colonialism, especially in the context in the context of the neo-colonialism that is combination both of the so-called East, so-called West. Because, I mean, I do have a problem with constantly binary oppositions created in this context. Also, how do we understand solidarity? How do we kind of, in the context of the talking about colonialism or reflecting towards, the colonialism, we still kind of understand the West, and then the West is the US, and then the US becomes the entire kind of, again, reflection. So I'm going to just kind of reflect. Again, I'm invited here to talk because there is some form of Bosnia missing there. And I cannot talk even about Bosnia because, to be honest, when talking about grassroots, when talking about experience, I can only reflect on the small community, not even Sarajevo as such, as a city I live in, but as a part that surrounds me. So, I mean, I really do kind of want to say that it is everything we ask, we also have to kind of have the follow-up the questions in order to kind of explain it. And I'm coming from the generation that is kind of survived the war of 90s and remembers the war of 90s, and also remembers the world before this kind of end of the Cold War, and actively remembers anti-colonial struggles as well as kind of this new world that I'm part of. So it's a mixture. It's a complicated mixture, and when talking about, and I can reflect on Feminist Anti-Militarist Collective that we kind of formed 15 years ago as a reflection on different situation that was happening in Bosnia, trying to kind of make visible trying to make visible connection of capitalism and patriarchy, heteronormativity. And then again, that's at the beginning, we were really, really ambitious in a sense that we really thought, oh, yes, we can mobilize. And what does that even mean? When we talk, and this is why I'm saying how we organize, how do we talk about representation as well? Because yes, we spoke anti-colonialism through the recognizing neocolonialism. We talked anti-militarism, and we spoke anti-capitalism in connecting it to the patriarchal oppression. But the question becomes, who understands us? It's such a small circles of people we can talk and communicate with. So it's the question, and this is not, and sorry, I'm mixing, I'm going all over the place because I just kind of changed my presentation in the middle of listening to all of you, because it is somehow, I do think this, what Diana mentioned, it is somehow also recognizing transgenerational struggle. When we say how do we, and this is an important one, how do we kind of escape NGOization. This is the segment that we kind of keep struggling all the time, but all the time with, because we don't have to recognize, for example, that NGOism has been tool of silencing social struggles, has been a capitalist tool for the last 30 years, at least from my perspective, of silencing dissent, has been a tool to kind of dismantle unionism and different other community organizing. So it's, again, when we talk about NGOism, we need to see that it's not NGOs and women in NGOs, for example, are not entirely enemies to us, because, for example, from Bosnia and Sarajevo experience, or my experience of the region we live in, is that quite a lot of women took up and organize around NGOs as a means of survival. So for me, that's not a problem, but it's the question of them having to recognize that. And that's why, for example, within the NGOs and within the this form of organizing, we also have hierarchies, and we also have quite a lot of harassment, mobbing, and all that, because of the trying to struggle to keep means of survival, to keep means of survival. The problem is that NGOs have been, it's not, it might be actually, it's not the problem, might be actually the positive side is NGOs have served its purpose. The money is going to be redirected. It's being redirected to the arms and to the militarization of society. So there is bigger, I don't know whether I don't make sense, but I don't want to I don't think that NGOs are competitions to us anymore. And this is, I'm using intentionally capitalist wording, competition, because this is how we how we kind of approached it when we talk about grassroots versus NGOs, and we have to recognize that. And now on the final note as well is, because we also tend to kind of talk decolonialism, but only kind of, what do we understand that when I said, how do we kind of understand colonialism, but also what do we see as being colonized and what we don't see. I do want to mention it because we did use the word social movement, and social movement is one of those kind of one issue formulation, individualistic. It's not about organizing, because organizing is the process. It's not the question of just having a protest. It's actually far wider. So, and I'm sorry, I'm being confused, but I kind of am still struggling to formulate different issues, but it is how we approach and how do we understand all of this that we are talking about. Because yes, there is individual part, that there is my personal, which is political, but how much of my personal or how much of my individual is relevant for the political? And this is the question of how do we understand solidarity also as a means of political struggle, not as the kind of personal or individualist satisfaction. And yeah, sorry, stop there.
Very important points, Gorana. Thanks so much for providing this critique of capitalism and what it has delivered to our spaces, and how it has also scattered the social movements and put us in different compartments of NGOs, grassroots, and other forms. But yes, I think it is very important to talk about the question, how then this work becomes collective and shared, under which I profile my individual contributions without naming individual, but kind of embedding within the larger struggle. Thank you all for your wonderful contributions. And you've shared so many good thoughts and thought-provoking input. And I have written down quite a few new questions. But I think I maybe wanna kind of recap a bit some of the main points that are connecting to the questions that Ash and Anna and Valentina kind of brought us here with in imagining this larger encounter today. The question of decolonization connects inevitably with the way we embody this work. We think of horizontality, and maybe this wasn't explicated today, but I would like to say the decolonization kind of invites us to think about what colonialities are we here talking about, and where is the abolition labor that we need to deploy, right? Where is that? What are those spaces and those oppressive structures where our abolitionist imaginations, thinkings, and practices need to be employed? Another question I think that was raised and that we might be opening the floor to for in our further discussion is, how do we work with racialized populations across the geographies, and how do we invite different populations to become part of the feminist movements and solidarity movements altogether? The question about movements being feminist or female labor, particularly, and the question of taxing emotional labor has been brought up here as well multiple times. And so how do we do this work without emotionally burning out whenever we connect to a struggle, whenever we plug into new layers of complexities? But how do we nurture and care about each other? How do we create that community accountability where we are ready to do hard work, but also feel supported doing that hard work? We've opened up the question of connectedness in sharing knowledges and creating archives and libraries of knowledge that serve both as resistance and empowering of the movements. And we have talked about how feminist struggles intersect with Palestinian struggle, how they intersect with creating safe spaces, how they intersect also with migration justice and many other labors. The question that came out for me here is that many of us in feminist labor see Palestine as our logical struggle. However, within pro-Palestinian movements, we've seen a lot of resistance towards feminism being integrated into pro-Palestinian struggle. So that might be a question we could be opening up here in a larger conversation as well. I will draw to one other question that was I will turn to one other question that was asked here, and that is the question of the potential and the commitment to imagining what life can be with one another and what life can be for one another, in terms of not only countering violences between our movements, but building solid solidarity-based social movements across the national borders in the Balkans and across different other boundaries. Then we came to a question of transgenerational knowledge transfer, empowerment transfer between the feminists and other activists in our spaces. And then again, we kind of, I think, close with a very sharp critique of the ways capitalism has overtaken our lives and our struggles and crumbled down collectivities and the sense of togetherness and the sense of collective resistance, and the question of how do we turn back to this in a sharp, committed ways is definitely standing in front of us. So this was just a little recap of what was opened up here during this conversation, and I'm sure much more as well. I would like to then maybe move from here to open up this conversation to everybody else present in this space. And I will put a couple of different questions here in the chat. Some of the questions that we came up with during the preparation of this webinar or this gathering. And I would like to ask everybody who's present here to maybe take a minute or two to jot down some of the immediate thoughts you're having, some of the interventions you want to make, some of the responses that have been kind of boiling inside of you. And then in a minute or two, we can open up this conversation. Or if anyone is ready now, let's go with that. So we are inviting you to speak with us. It is not necessarily asking question to the panelists or to the people that offered interventions. It is really the opening to speak with us and to offer any resonances or refusals that you might have. Please take the floor and become part of this thinking, collective thinking. Whoever is ready, please join us in this conversation. I see many familiar names here. I am tempted to call out people. Lucia.
No. Hi.
Hey.
I'm very happy to be here, and thanks to everyone who shared the experience and the knowledge today. But yeah, this is a very important topic, and I have a lot of not comment, but just a lot of thinking to do myself as a feminist and activist in Croatia. But I feel like for the first question, so what does feminist organizing feel like where you are right now? And I think through the years it has become very were more difficult for me, at least, because of the NGOization. And I'm very happy that we actually tried to we heard already something about the NGOization and capitalism in our sectors. And I would say that a lot of that I would blame the EU for a lot of things because of, well, the system, of course, because I've experienced a lot of it's just straight up burnout because of the administrations, because of all the things that you have to do, and you just, at least and I think I shouldn't feel that tired in my 26 years of living, but I feel tired already because I think too often I feel very alone in my battles. Although I know I'm not alone, but I feel like we are that tired that we cannot even be there for one another anymore. It just, I don't know. It's how I feel like. But yes, that's why I think those conversations are very much needed. And I'm myself finding the ways to recuperate and to get better. But also, it's very hard not to just leave all behind and, start something that would. But I cannot do it because I don't know. I don't, I find my purpose in the work I do, the feminist work I do. But yes, it's very, very hard. And the Palestine has definitely been a huge inspiration, but also such tough um, um, kick that I don't know how to even walk again. I literally don't know. It's just, yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. Anyone else? Vasilika? Vasilika and Anna.
Sorry. To comment on the microphone. Wanted to connect to what Lucia said, to also what Elena said, and to some of the and to come out and say that this has been, and what also
Vasilika, I'm sorry for interrupting you. I can't hear you well. Is everyone else having the same issue? Yeah. You're cutting in and out very quickly, and it's very hard to hear what you're saying. What if you try to turn your cam off? Maybe that is going to help with the connection.
I'll be trying to change the device. Please go on. I'll join later.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Anna, please go on. Hopefully Vasilika can fix this problem there.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Amina. Thank you, Ashik. Thanks, everyone. Valentina, everyone who helped put this together. Very excited to be here. I am Anna. I translated a little earlier, but anyways, I'm living in Belgrade, Serbia, but I was born in the US and am involved in, Palestinian solidarity, anti-imperialism struggles. Hopefully, some of you will be on the anti-imperialist panel later today. But yes, what to say? I think there's so much here that I don't even know where to start. But I guess one of the things that I really appreciated that Gorana talked a little bit about was this sort of false binary that we see not just in the Balkans, right, but all over the world, these kind of like ideologies of lesser evilism in particular are surrounding larger imperialist powers and their sway and influence in our region. And I think that unfortunately, many people are still um, consumed by this idea that there's a need to pick a side in a sense, like as Gorana was saying a little bit, East versus West. And I think that really that is limiting all of our struggles, right? Because it is playing into this divide and rule strategy that these larger powers largely benefit from, right? Because if they keep us busy picking sides instead of uniting over the common struggles that we do have, whether it's, feminism or anti-capitalist, these sort of things, pro-environmental conservation, whatever, then they can keep us fighting between each other as they can, right? They can exploit the resources, the labor in each of our countries and regions. And I think that also feminism is also related to that because I was speaking with Diana before this conversation too, and she mentioned that in when she visited Kosovo a bit, one of the things that, and maybe she can speak to this as well, one of the issues when she spoke to different feminists was that a big barrier to uniting was, ethnic backgrounds. And instead of people being able to, like women being able to come together and fight against patriarchal oppression that they're both facing in their respective communities, they were kept divided by these ethnic lines. And I think just to say that there's a lot more to be done to break down those. I don't have an answer. I mean, I think this conversation is important for that. But it also requires people in their own bubbles to question the ideologies that they've been indoctrinated with. And I know, speaking as someone from Serbia, it's taken me and many people a lot of time to see through those nationalist, rhetorical kind of, barriers and basically prison cells that they put us in, kind of that limits us from crossing different borders and uniting with people in these common struggles because we're fed this idea that, well, we're one, we have this unity along the basis of a nation, and that is like sacrosanct. That's the highest level of unity, right? But as I think many of us would agree here, that is actually just sort of a trick. So anyways, I hope that some of that was helpful or made sense, but just wanted to get the conversation going in terms of what I'm thinking about when I think about the challenges in feminism struggles and beyond that.
What an interesting panel will be the last one, reflecting of that question of imperialisms and our anti-imperialist struggles. Looking forward to that. Elena, please go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to add on maybe what I did on earlier while I was focusing on more of a grassroots mutual aid, non-related to NGOs, because I don't know if I said this, but it wasn't funded what we did. We have this problem as well in Kosovo, I think, especially in Kosovo and Bosnia after the genocide and ethnic cleansing. There was a lot of international aid and humanitarian interventions. For example, I was born in 2001, and I think that like by the age of 3 or 4, in my play as a child, I also mentioned UNMIK, UN Mission in Kosovo. It was such a big.
You.
Our liberation was sort of half liberation, of course. 1 second, I will join again from my phone.
Thanks for working with that. Vasilika, while we are waiting, Elena, maybe. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I got a bit disconnected from what I wanted to say, but I have felt the paralyzing effect of inter-group violence within our groups, of this, when I mentioned earlier the need for horizontality. We fought so much to make sure that there is a space for people where there is moderation, and we have invented these little tricks, like every session needs to be moderated by somebody new, so to allow that people have, to allow this, what Gorana was saying, like this real dynamics of power that are there. And of course it's not easy to it's not easy to overcome them. It's easy to fall into the traps, and this is why education is so important, and this is why looking into why we're doing what we're doing and questioning that, coming back to it, is so important. We have this feminist reading group that is led by some of our feminist friends, and we participate. It's an online group where I will post the link there. It's called Radical Sense, where we try to educate ourselves and each other through readings of important feminists, but also trans feminists, Palestinian scholars, and all possible. We did some discussion, very important discussion during pandemic. Joyful Militantism is a book that I have been inspired by in terms of having how we are working with ourselves as ethical activists. Are we falling into the trap of gossiping each other and looking at each other as enemies, or are we looking into making, supporting and finding ways of connection? And this is where it's so important that we go back to that from time to time. I couldn't stay in one of these discussions where we were discussing about trans feminism. I felt so guilty that we don't do enough. And in our feminist march, we've lost people because we have trans women in the first row. And we always want to make sure that we are. And we had a big Palestinian flag on the 8th of March because, of course, we cannot talk about femicide and women's struggle and women liberation if we don't connect all liberation movements. Of course, we forgotten some of those. We didn't have a Sudanese flag. We didn't have a Congolese flag. We don't have a Kashmir flag. So there is so much disconnection that we cannot respond to, but we are also a small group of fragile women with bodies that we need to take care of. And this is also so important, making sure that we check with ourselves and with each other to support each other. And this is where I want to mention another group that I am part of that I think that I would like to replicate also in Albania. And it's a group of psychologists practicing group analysis. And we meet together every 6 weeks to discuss internalized misogyny. And this is where I came across with the knowledge that so many women don't only fear man aggression, but women's aggression sometimes can be more difficult and dangerous to them, and especially has to do with internalized traumas and things that people face. So and this is a continuous work that we need to do with each other. I wanted to make a point about NGOization. I fully agree with Gorana that NGOization has been silencing women's voices, but also anti-capitalist critical voices. NGOization, though, has worked, especially in pandemic in Albania, as a substitute of social protection and social care. And NGOs and women, especially within these NGOs groups, do so much work. And within that NGOization sort of silencing them because they have to speak only so much, we connect with them and we try to engage when we organize our 8th of March slogan and messages. We always go back to these women who do so much of the care, but that care and that work gets invisibilized. So I don't think that there is a binary division between us and us and them. And as Elena's reminder in the beginning, it's so important that we go into these activism spaces and we find the harassers, and the harassers are among us. And sometimes we have to work with ourselves and with the harasser not to. It's easier to isolate and to say like, oh, we are a women's group. We don't invite either men in our group. We don't invite harassers, but they exist out there, and this is why we're organizing. So already took too much space, sorry.
No, you haven't taken much space. Thank you for this contribution, and it connects so well with, I think, what Elena was mentioning earlier. And Elena, would you like to maybe continue there where you...
I will try to sum it up because this is such a broad topic, and I think like this shows that discussion is so necessary, especially among us, and defining, as it was mentioned earlier by my colleague. I'm sorry because I'm not good with names from Bosnia. On actually defining what we understand the Balkans and what we understand as colonialism. And this is definitely a call, I guess, just this discussion, how broad it is for us to sit down together and discuss more. But yeah, I think in Kosovo, it took me quite a while to understand because it's all very emotional. Like being a first generation after ethnic cleansing and genocide, I carry the emotions of my parents, of the people around me, for something that maybe I never experienced. But I think for us, it's still that we're still living in war. It's still present, especially with threats from Serbia that it uses it also for its own political narratives there. And for us here, And I don't know, I feel like these international projects in the Balkans that from reading I've understood that have been here even before, have been planning even before the Ottoman Empire, ways on how to divide the Balkans, and the consequences of each influence can be seen. But there's also, as mentioned, personal responsibilities, because I think it's also sometimes very easy to blame everything on colonial forces, which I absolutely agree that it has been a horrible effect that they have implemented on us in many ways, but also understanding and accepting what has been done by local communities, because there's a lot of division, a lot of scars that have to be acknowledged and have to be discussed. And it's a big difference, I would say, in narratives, like Anna mentioned. And I think this is like the crucial point of us getting together. And it's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be easy, but it's the first point to starting this, because I don't know, I think in Kosovo, because the market until now has been NGOs, all of the activists had no choice but to also work in an NGO, because how are you going to support yourself otherwise? And it has a lot of effect in our local economy as well, because you cannot support yourself differently or have any local businesses. Almost everyone was working in some sort of international project, but most of them are being closed for military actions, as mentioned. And as you can see, people now without jobs. USAID has closed, for example, like one of the biggest centers was in Kosovo, and it had a lot of faults, but at the same time, it fed a lot of families. So it's a very difficult thing to talk and theorize with other people. But yeah, okay, just one last thing, because there's so many that just keep popping in my head. I think even the way feminism has been shaped until now has been by these international projects, and the way feminists, sometimes the mainstream, has been through discussion panels and touching briefly on topics, and always blaming it as this huge, big nationalism that's happening in the Balkans, as though it's happening nowhere else. And we sort of, I sometimes felt, because I also worked in international organizations, we're putting this show of checking what the donor wants and saying, yes, these are the bad things in Kosovo, these are in Serbia, these are there. And this superficial encounters that led to nowhere. And now, of course, they are closed. I don't think no one is going to care about democratizing the Balkans anymore. That's not a priority. And yeah, there's the call to us to do this ourselves, to organize this in a more meaningful and way that makes sense to us, not to donor-funded projects in the EU, in Washington, or wherever. Like they said, it's not just the West, it's also other imperial forces coming from the East. It's a region that is proxy to many things, to many issues that are not necessarily ours, that the citizens that we are living there, but just geographical location. So yeah, I'm glad that we are on the same page, and I hope we continue these discussions.
Such complex interventions, and there is so little time left. I feel like I want to respond to almost every sentence that was shared in the last 5 minutes. But let me ask others who are here to come into this conversation. I recognize Natasha, Alisa, Nijara, Slajana, Liridona, and I don't recognize as well many others, but whoever is here, please do join us. We have about 20 minutes left for this conversation. We would like to hear your voice. Let's see. Lucia, did I see your hand before? And I invite others.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just wanted to also the great statement from Elena about the activists that are kind of that have to work in NGOs. And as an activist, I totally agree. That is also like a lot of pressure because you are trying to do a lot of work, but again, there's this administrations and bureaucratization of the systems. So I just wanted to also touch on soft law of European Union, because for us in Croatia, a lot of projects we have from the NGOs are from the EU, right? And I think since the soft law of the European Union, and especially about the gender equality, it's just I don't think in Croatia we did enough of backlash on that, especially after 2015. But yes, I do think that feminist NGOs are just trapped in project cycles, and we have to prioritize EU-friendly language, for example, gender mainstreaming, right, over some maybe radical demands of intersectional feminism or abortion rights. So yes, I do think that we truly need a safe community to talk about all of this. Yes, because the NGOization is kind of killing us, I would say. Especially the smaller organizations. I am a part of the organization named in Bonafide or Udobrovieri, and we are a very small organization. But we do a lot of work with especially with yes women, but also I work with queer people who are also religious. So it's also something that's not it hasn't been done in Croatia, especially because it's so hard to reach these kind of people. And I don't feel seen by the system. I feel very much used by it. So I do think that we need a lot of community, but safe community where we can really learn, where we can connect, and finally feel safe and maybe rest a little bit. That's it. Thank you.
Rest from the entrapment of within the project cycles and EU calling for more bureaucratized work, but then not rest from grassroots organizing and building collectivity, I guess. Would anyone else like to speak and join the conversation? Alisa, glad to see you. Thank you, Alisa, for bringing in your trembling voice and for your shaking honesty. I truly appreciate your coming into this space, and I hope you like baking. If your next step is bakery, I hope that is going to bring some joy. But I hear you about the precarity. Liridona, please go ahead.
Hi, I'll turn my camera on. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much, and thank you for your contributions. I enjoyed listening to you all, and I was reflecting on, because this is like what I'm about to say is part of a broader reflection we have been having as in the collective that I am part of, which is the Feminist collective that works in Kosovo, and it is about this relation that we have with this NGOization. And I think that we are in a phase when we are not dealing with NGOization anymore. Is this phase of de-NGOization? At least this is how it feels in Kosovo, because now we're seeing a very strong propaganda against civil society that mostly is directed to NGOs. And I don't think that this dichotomous and binary understanding of NGOization and everything that is more radical or whatever false outside this works anymore, because we are seeing that the turn towards this real politics is attacking even NGOs, because the right-wing propaganda is primarily attacking NGOs, feminist NGOs, and NGOs that deal with queer rights and this whatever is too radical for the capitalist and corporate led voices. So I think that now we need to rethink how we see NGOs right now. At least, I mean, I don't agree that NGOs, at least what I see in Kosovo, are like this totally liberal NGOs. These NGOs in Kosovo, especially after the war, were the ones that challenged colonialist tendencies that came to Kosovo. So they were the ones that said, no, this is a very colonialist, patriarchal way of how you are depicting Albanian women, especially, and they resisted, and they were in a continuous conversation in thinking or having their own voice in the process of this development. So I think this post-developmental phase that we are in, especially as a phase, calls us or is inviting us to rethink how we see ourselves. And also because me as an activist that is an anti-capitalist, radical, whatever we call it, I was working in an NGO when I co-founded with a comrade of mine the collective that we're still working. So, and I was doing this labor, and I think that every activist that is, especially in the feminist circles, does this very continuous labor that sort of puts us in a very cognitive dissonance sometimes, because we have to operate within the status quo, but we continuously do this work of challenging and also refusing how developmental agencies present or project the development of Kosovo. And now I see this because nowadays we're having struggles to mobilize people. And this, I think, is directly linked to the propaganda that we see spreading throughout the whole world regarding the feminist agendas and also the queer agendas. And I think that we need to rethink how we push back and how we work also with people that work in the civil society sector to mobilize. And this is inviting us to rethink about our strategies and maybe to contextualize what we mean by radical. And this is also work that we are doing in the collective, because in the beginning, I mean, the collective was totally against working with NGOs. But this was something that we had to negotiate through our journey in order to achieve some important aims that we had in a specific time. But yeah, but this was like while everybody was talking, I was thinking, oh, are we in an NGOization phase right now? Are we really in an NGOization phase right now? And how we think and theorize informs the way how we operate, and how this is affecting how public and how present we are in public sphere right now. I'm talking about our experience in Kosovo, but I think that this reflects also to broader dynamics also in other countries. So yeah.
Yes, much resonance in what you said. Thanks for pivoting the conversation into understanding that realm, and for reminding us about the importance of connecting in fighting against the politics of, agenda making within feminist and queer movements, or feminist and queer agendas that are very, very harmful, not only for those communities, but larger society. Rosie, I think you wanted to contribute as well. See you here.
My heart is full, both being here and talking to people and both listening to you, especially when our voices are trembling, and especially when we're talking also about our own feelings, and just starting from a very, personal perspective. And yeah, I think the main point that I would like to emphasize is that community is important, and seeing ourselves as a community is very important. And yeah, it's very rewarding to be part of these spaces and to be challenged constantly. And I really appreciate this. That's all I wanted to say.
Even though maybe hearts are not showing on the screen, I trust that we are all thinking with full hearts here, being reminded that community is what counts and that it's extremely important for all of our struggles. Valentina, did I see you wave? Would you like to add something?
I wanted to speak after Rosie because I think it could be a very nice proposition that we talked about together as well to do a reunion at Kino Armata in Pristina that she manages. So this is a proposition that I would like to share with you all to close with some ideas to develop together. And then what stuck with me of what Gorana said before was what is that we still do not see that needs to be decolonized. And there is Lulieta Leșnacu is a beautiful Albanian poet. She says that negative space is always fertile. And I really hope that when we meet again, hopefully soon, not to let too much time pass, to really work out these questions together and really and here I connect again with Gorana's point on is the solidarity for the political. I think it's clear that we need to have a solidarity within our small communities and collectives from where we are, and this network can really be a possibility to build solidarity for like real like full like political action. And I believe we all work. I think everything that was said today, we all feel very much burned out. We have difficulties in supporting each other also. And we feel sometimes angry in feeling hopeless. So like a lot of different emotions brought together. Last Sunday, there was Yafa, a Palestinian trans-Palestinian woman who came and gave us a beautiful workshop on anger. And she really worked out a lot of the questions that we had today. And I thought how beautiful it is that Palestine is liberating us in this moment. I was telling her, and I thought that is what we can work through. And I know it's very general thought, but through all the complexity, the intergenerational, the militarization of the Balkans now is not a democratization anymore. Now it's going to be the militarization. That's what's going to happen in Albania, most probably. We can find a way for working through abundance. That's what Yafa was saying, and not through scarcity, through hope together. And I would like really to launch, like now Rosie is gonna talk, maybe she has something to say about Kino Armata, but the possibility to really meet together, to find a way to get resources together. I don't know where from, whatever, but to really meet at Kino Armata at some point, maybe in autumn. Rosie, what do you think?
I actually left my hand up on accident, but yeah, I love that idea, and we can further discuss. Another thing that I just remember that we brainstormed about was to, out of these sessions to create, I don't know if you mentioned, because I'm having a hard time fully concentrating. There's so much going on. But we also talked about creating work groups out of these sessions in order to you know, I guess work on something more concretely and really try to focus on getting somewhere together rather than just sharing experiences. So yeah, that would be a nice way, like maybe if we start a work group and then we see how we can plan a reunion or other things that might help us get to know each other better.
I fully support the idea of meeting in person and having regular conversations and meetings of this sort via online platforms that are available to us. But yes, I would like to come back to thanking Valentina for segueing into the kind of a closing question. What are we carrying from this space today? And Valentina, thank you for offering your thoughts about solidarity and inviting us to continue this work, and Rosie, you as well. Maybe this is the time for Anna, Deanna, Vasilika, Gorana, if you want to offer maybe a thought, a gesture to the question of what are you carrying from this space, and anyone else being here as well. Some people started writing in the chat. I'm inviting you to do that if that feels more comfortable as well. But whoever would like to maybe offer another word or sentence by voicing it out, you're welcome to do so. We have enough time left for hearing a few voices.
Evo mogu da podelim ja. Ja ću sa ovog panela poneti taj osjećaj da nisam sama ni u ovom umoru, burnoutu, ni u ovoj borbi i da neko preko granice zapravo prati šta se dešava u našim zemljama i da zapravo naša snaga leži u umrežavanju.
Yes, I will just translate that. Diana was saying that one of the things she'll take away from this is the feeling that she's not alone in feeling burnt out or in this, long, arduous struggle, and that people across the region, in a different country, across the border, are following, and that we have strength in coming together. I think that's it. Yeah, I will just add that I think we all feel that, coming together is so special, and it's a shame we don't do it more. So I think that I echo, making something of this more regular, because it's, of course, a way to feel less alone, but I think it's also important to have space to air out, sometimes even disagreements, because we can come out stronger through those discussions. And so, yeah, I just, I'm so happy to be here with you all, and I look forward to this not being the last time that we do this.
If I can offer like a last feeling, honestly, gratitude to all of you for organizing this encounter and everybody who's taken part. So much of what was shared is also on the level beyond the brilliant analyses and reflections on lived experiences. So much of what was shared is also kind of on this intangible level. I shouldn't say intangible, like deeply felt level, difficult to put into words. And I think it would be really lovely to meet in person, and to continue connecting with each other. And I feel very grateful to all of you for having this company and this opening into what you said. I think what someone said at the beginning, the feeling of togetherness, the feeling of how can we be and become as expansive as we can, to address the onslaught that we're currently facing all over the world.
Yeah, maybe I can turn on the camera because of internet, but I also echo meeting together in person and co-creating knowledge and practices together that come from us and serve us, especially in these trying times. Like it was mentioned, we are going towards militarization. Even I returned to Kosovo yesterday. I came from Tirana, and in the border with Kosovo, there was a Frontex police officer. And this reality is just becoming more and more scary and difficult, and so much more work ahead of us, I think, especially with, I don't know, since it's the end, I'm not gonna, we all know what's happening, but this is perfect timing. And I can't wait to work more in the future together.
Thank you all for your voices, for your contributions, for thought-provoking inputs, and for heartfelt ones. When we were putting this panel together, I was reminded that I was recently reading again Françoise Verger and her book on decolonial feminism, as so much of this conversation today was about decoloniality. I pulled out a quote where Verger argues that decolonial feminism is really sort of asking us to be pulling ourselves out from the comforts of institutional power and turning towards care and rage and refusal and long labor of memory. And to me, it seems that much of that happened in this conversation today. That's why it calls for continuity, whether on Zoom, whether in person, but hopefully both in combination. But more than that, I think decolonial work or abolitionist work and sort of an honest work in building social movements is asking from us to ask difficult questions and to be able to live and work together in what some of you already named, community accountability and community growth. And Anna, you asked a really good question, like what does it mean to live with each other and for each other? And I think I'm going to be quoting you from now on. It is such a striking and such a very, very gentle and very natural question to ask, particularly amid the onslaught that you already referred to. I'd like to remind us as well at the closing of this session that Andriana Zaharievich wrote also extensively about what feminist struggle and feminism mean. And she talked about it not being just a theory of equality, but she said it is a stubborn commitment to transforming the world by transforming the conditions of our lives without ever asking for permission. And this conversation was all about that as well. So this stubborn commitment is not only this conversation, but a collective insistence on change across fences, across silences, across disciplines, geographies, states. And so this wasn't just a rehearsal in this space. It was a showing of that committed struggle, and it was a calling for deepening and widening that struggle too. So I really thank you all for being here. And I invite you to stay, I hope, on this Zoom link for the next panel that starts in 25 minutes. And yes, let's keep running into each other with intention from now on. Thanks again for this experience, and bye-bye.
I think just one last note from Rosie.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, since we were talking about ending with something like a concrete action plan, and I mentioned the work group, I just wanted to let you all know that I will be following up with, sorry for the noise, with an email where we can form a work group that will think about how to get together, how to organize a meetup, and take it from there.
Thanks, Rosie. Thanks for being committed to the practice and labor, immediate one. Okay, see you then soon, right?
Yeah.
Valentina, Anna, do you want to do any other closing?
Just thank you. Really, it was very like a lot of gratitude for this as well. And thank you all. And till soon.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. See you on the next panel.
Thanks,
Yes, see
everyone.
you soon. Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mm.